So you'll notice that we have 4 different flags up here, right? That's because before this was America, this was Mexico. And before it was, see the Mexican flag, right? And before it was Mexico, this is part of what we call the San Gabriel mission. So the mission was brought here by the Spanish, right? Before the Spanish were here, this was Native American land, right? And there are still Native Americans who live here. They're in our schools. They help us a lot at our events, so they're still here. But when this building was built, it was America. But it was built for a guy named Ignacio Palomares, and he was given this land by the governor of Mexico. There were 3 rules you had to follow to get this land. You had to be a Mexican citizen, you had to speak Spanish, and you had to be a member of the Catholic Church. So that's why we have all these different flags up, because at different points in time, this land has been considered different places. But the people are still here, right? All right, so now this right here is pretty cool. Now, this building was originally built in 1854, okay? Now, in 1854, do you think that they had like a Stater Brothers they could go get water from? Yes or no? No? Do you think that they had El Super that they could just go down the road and get in the 1850s? No, they did not. They didn't even have cars then, right? They definitely didn't have air conditioning. So it got a little warm, right? So to get water, they had a couple of options. You used to see a lot of snow on the top of the mountains in the winter. And as the snow gets warm during the rest of the year, it melts and it comes down the mountains, right? And that water would go into these ditches that they called zanjas. And that's how they would get their water. They also had a well. So this is pretty cool. They had like mountain water in their backyard. It's pretty nifty. Now, those picnic tables were not here when they were here. That's for us to use now. And now what we see is a carriage. Okay, so remember that I said that they didn't have cars, right? So does anybody have an idea of what they would have used instead of cars? And I need help. Let's see. So, okay, Kayla, what do you think?
I think they used horses to pull the carriages.
Exactly. So they used horses, and sometimes they use things called oxes or oxen, and they're a lot bigger and sturdier. They can carry heavier things, but they're a little bit slow. So the nearest city would have been Los Angeles, and that still would have taken 2 days to go by carriage. We're going to zoom up on this carriage. Now, I want you to take a look at those wheels. Does it look like there's any rubber on them? No, right? So they're just wood. Now, do you think it's comfortable to ride in a carriage that's just got wood tires, and every time you go over a bump or a rock, you're going like this? Do you think that sounds comfortable? It doesn't sound very comfortable to me. And imagine doing like this for 2 days. That would get pretty old, right? Not nearly as comfortable as like taking the Metro Link, like some of you folks may have in some of the other trips.
Who came on the Metrolink trip with us? Let me see your hands. Who came on Metrolink with us? Was it a fun trip?
Yes.
Who was there when we missed the train? Who was there when we missed the train? Oh, okay. Okay, you're reminding me, right? Okay.
Oh my gosh.
It happens to the best of us. I know.
It happened to me twice, so.
Oh, well, it happens to the very best of us twice sometimes.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, now to make and look at those benches that they would have sat on. There's not really a lot of padding. Super uncomfortable. Okay, this is our friend Mike. Everybody say hi, Mike. He's not really there right now. He can't hear us, but he works at the Adobe. He lives there and he takes care of it. And right now he's showing us the blacksmith shop. Now, remember that I said that there wasn't like a Stater Brothers nearby, right? The nearest city would have been Los Angeles. But to work a ranch, which was this was a cattle ranch, you need a lot of tools. and they would make those things out of metal. And that's what a blacksmith did. So right here, we're seeing a blacksmith shop. Right now, Mike is pointing us toward another piece of the cart. Here are some of the tools, and now you're going to see one of the best parts. Ha-ha! So that's a piece of metal. They would have gotten that really hot, and then they would have banged it on that anvil. Blah! Now, I know lately we've had to stay closed because of COVID-19, but we've been working on a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And if you ever get to come here with a class trip, you get to bang on that anvil. So definitely look forward to that. Okay, super uncomfortable.
So boys, you remember when we were learning about the cloud, the big rain clouds, and the way it was shaped like an anvil? Do you remember she was talking about the way it was shaped like an angle at the bottom, those big gray clouds right before rain? So that's,
right.
We've heard that word anvil before this summer.
Right. So the anvil would have been this big piece of metal. If you were trying to make something out of metal, you had to hammer it, right? And you needed something really strong and sturdy to hold it on while you were hammering it, and that's what an anvil was for. So now we're taking a look at basically the back of the house. So this house belonged to Ignacio Palomares, and I mentioned before that he got this land from the Mexican governor, right? They were cattle ranchers, so they didn't have a farm the way we usually think of a ranch, right? They had huge herds of cattle that would just kind of wander around and eat the grass and things. And so the animals could be spread out really far. And you were also really far away from other people. So you had to keep an eye out. So can everybody see this little window on top of the home over to my left? Everybody see that? That is a lookout window. So whoever was small enough to fit up there had to go up there and look out and see if they could see where the cattle were, if they could see any dust fire or brush fires happening, or if they saw anybody coming. There were Native Americans still living in the area, and so some people would move in and out. So who wants to scrunch up in a ball and look out that window when it's hot outside all day? Yeah? Not for me, no thank you. But it was hard living on this ranch. It was not easy. There's a lot of stuff that we probably would not do. We would not want to do.
Girls and boys, heat rises. So in a house, all the heat goes to the top. So that little room that Miss Jennifer was showing us got really, really hot because it was at the very top of the house. So hot it rises.
And did they have electricity, do you think, in 1854? No. So did they have air conditioning? No. So it got pretty toasty. Now remember that we were saying that it can get pretty hot here, right? We know it gets hot here. So a lot of times they would cook outside because if you're cooking with a fire inside, first of all, an accident could happen, right? But it'll make your house really warm. So they would have cooked outdoors with an orno like this. Does anybody know what orno means? Can you raise your hand? Kayla?
It means stove.
Yeah, it's like a stove or an oven. So this is the kind of thing that they would have cooked with. And everybody always asks me if this was a pizza oven. It's not a pizza oven. But I guess you could cook pizza in it if you wanted to, but they wouldn't have. Now we're going to look inside. Now we know how a pizza feels when it goes into one of these ovens. And so they would have had a fire going in there. They would have had smoke coming out of the top, right? And that way, that's how they would have cooked their food. Cool?
It's a good thing that Pablo was small so he could climb into that oven.
Yeah, maybe he could clean it out for us.
No, thank you.
Oh, nice, Pablo, thanks. So there's a cannon there that we kind of scrolled by. Because their land was so big, sometimes when they needed to let people know that something was going on or if they were having a party or something, they would shoot off a cannon. Can you imagine people shooting off a cannon in Pomona right now? That'd be kind of weird. Okay, y'all ready to go inside? Yay! Here we go. Okay, we're not gonna let the door slam behind us. Woo! And here's our friend Mike again. Hi, Mike. Okay, so this house actually had wood floors. Originally, when they first moved out here, the Palomares family had dirt floors. And the thing about dirt is that it's hard to keep clean. So when they had wood floors put in, they thought that was really fancy. And neighbors would come around and look at the wood in the home because that was really special to them. And now we have regular floors and we don't think anything of it. Okay, we see a lot of religious art on the walls here. And remember, I said that one of the rules to get this land was that you had to be a member of the Catholic Church, right? Their faith was really important to the Palomares family. Right now, we're in what would have been like their living room. They would have spent a lot of time in here praying, that sort of thing. Now, this would have been the grown-ups room. So this would have been Ignacio and Concepcion Palomares' bedroom, right? So they were in charge of the rancho here. Now, the reason that we know it's the parents' bedroom is, well, because they told us, that's what it was written down. But also it has a fireplace. Now, generally at this time period, kids would have all slept together in a bed, right? The parents didn't all sleep with all the kids, so they needed to keep warm. It's also probably just not a good idea to put a fireplace in the kids' room. Right, not a good idea. So you can tell where the parents were by seeing where the fireplaces were. This house had a lot of fireplaces, and again, that was like a symbol of wealth. Like, it was super cool. This is a painting that is in the Pomona train station, and that shows the adobe being built. And now we're looking at the man himself. This is a painting of Ignacio Palomares. Everybody say hi, Ignacio. Hi, Ignacio. Now, he looks very serious. Right? Because we always smile in our pictures, right? There are a couple of reasons for that. So we said that there's no air conditioning, there's no market nearby. Do you think there was a dentist anywhere nearby? No. So do you think maybe their teeth were their teeth might get a little icky. But also, they would just stay straight-faced like that because they wanted, they were getting their picture taken and they wanted to look kind of noble, right? And if they looked at our pictures today and saw everybody smiling and doing stuff in the pictures, they would think that we look really silly. Now we're going to go back out into the sala. Super duper into looking at that painting of Ignacio. Turn around. Just kidding. Okay, so again, religious stuff on the walls. There's Mike. There's a bed like the one that Ignacio and Concepcion would have slept on. You'll notice that they have no closets, right? So they would have these big things called armoires. So there are some pictures here on the wall, but first we're going to kind of bend down. We're going to take a look. We have a few different musical instruments here, right? Does anybody recognize any of those instruments? And let me check and see. Okay, does anybody recognize an instrument? Okay, Kayla?
There are pianos, guitars, and I think a ukulele.
That's very close. It's a banjo. There are banjo ukuleles that look very similar. So it's a good guess. So if you wanted to hear your favorite music, you couldn't just turn on the radio, right? So imagine if you want to hear your favorite song, you can't just click on the radio or, put it on your phone or something like that. So what you had to do was know how to play an instrument or ask your friends to help you sing the song. Do you think that you'd like having to listen to like Despacito or a song with like your brother singing? I wouldn't like that. I want to hear the real people, but they didn't have a radio. They didn't have something that recorded the sound yet. So they made music themselves. But when you think about it, that's pretty cool, right? They would learn to read the music. So in a way, it's kind of cool, right? It's a bummer that we don't use musical instruments more now. But at the same time, like Taylor Swift is definitely a better singer than I am. So it's kind of a trade-off. They would have spent a lot of time out here in the sala practicing their music. That would have been a thing that they liked to do when they were hanging out as a family.
Miss Jennifer, we all learned how to play. We learned how to play percussions with some pans a few weeks ago, didn't we?
Oh, what's up? So you guys.
Drums at home. Which of you guys played the drums at home when we did it with our pots and pans? Yeah, Mr. Bonner was on teaching us how to do that.
Oh, great. Awesome. So you all would have definitely been invited to the parties here, right? So they would still have parties and get-togethers. The neighbors were really far away, but, you could always just set off that cannon and say, hey, everybody, come over here. And if you knew how to play an instrument and you were good at it, or if you were a good singer, you got invited to parties more, right? Now, this right here is a picture. Well, there are two pictures here. On the right-hand side, that's Ignacio Palomares, right? So that's the guy that we just saw, the painting in the other room. On the left is a guy named Ricardo Vejar. Let's see if we get a better shot. There we go. And so then Ricardo Vejar is on the left. Now, Ignacio Palomares and Ricardo Vejar were both given land from the Mexican governor, right? So again, when they were here originally, they were Mexican citizens, and this was part of Mexico, right? They were given that land, and the northern part of the ranch, like the upper part of the ranch, that was run by Ignacio. The lower part of the ranch was run by the guy on the left, Ricardo. Now we're going to see some other folks from the family. This lady right here is Concepcion Palomares. She's the lady of the house. That was Ignacio Palomares' wife. This is a picture of the San Gabriel mission, because this was part of the mission while this was considered a Spanish colony. I'm just going to hang out. And now we're going to look at a couple of these things. These are kind of pretty. Here's another one. Cool. Here's a third one. Okay, so it's kind of hard to see at this angle, but I'm wondering if anybody wants to make a guess about what that might be made out of. Just raise your hands. Any guess? Okay, Kayla, what do you think?
Maybe plants?
Sometimes they might use plants. This is what we call a wreath. So sometimes you might have some plant stuff in there, but that's not all it's made out of. Does anybody else have another guess they want to try? There are no silly answers. Just guess. What do you think they might have used based on what it looks like? Come on. Do you think maybe it looks like there's some thread in there? You'll see like thread. Do you see like ribbon? That sort of thing? Remember that I said that there are no stores nearby, right? So you couldn't just go somewhere and buy craft material. So you had to use what you had nearby. And it turns out that we are all carrying around craft supply all the time that we don't even think about. I want everybody to put up their right hand. Right hand, everybody? Cool. Now go like this. This right here on the top of your head, that is a craft supply. These were made out of hair. These were called hair wreaths. So women wear their hair really long, and they brush their hair every night. And instead of getting rid of the hair like we do, they would keep it. And over time, they'd collect a bunch of the hair, and then they put it together and make a wreath out of it. If somebody gave you guys a bunch of their hair and they made a craft with it, would you like that? Does that sound cool? Who wants a hair wreath? No, sounds kind of weird, right? But it's easy for us to go. I know it sounds kind of, I wouldn't want one either. And I work in history museums. I like old stuff, and no thank you, none for me. But because they were so far away from different supply places, etc., they would have to make do with what they had. Also, for a lot of the time, they didn't have photographs. And once they started getting photographs, they were really expensive. So people couldn't take pictures of themselves and one another to remember one another by, right? So they would sometimes use their hair for that purpose. And that's, that's what they want to do. All right, not for me. And that is a photo of a bunch of Palomares descendants. we're gonna walk into, and this would have been, again, this is called the sala, which is like the living room. The family would have spent a lot of time in here when they weren't out working on the ranch. It took a lot of work to make the ranch run. This is a model of the Adobe. When you're in, I think it's middle school, you might end up making a model of the Adobe. Some people make models of missions in the 4th grade, I think, or 3rd grade. That lady is Josefa Palomares. That was Ignacio's sister. She was the first teacher in the area. She looks very serious. I don't think I would have messed with her. I would not have talked in her class. Okay, so this room does not have a fireplace, so this was not a grown-up's room. This was not the adults' room, right? A bunch of the children, and they had up to 12 children living in the house at one point. A bunch of the children would sleep in here together. Right here we have a pitcher and a basin. So they did not have sinks, right? They did not have indoor water. So to be able to wash their hands, that sort of thing, they had to go out to the well or the sanja, right? That ditch in the ground, and they'd have to scoop up the water, bring it inside. They keep it in that pitcher. They pour a little bit in, and wash their hands or faces that way. Woo! Okay, now we don't see it super duper well because Pablo was filming and he was being polite. But I mentioned that there's no sink inside, right? Do you think there was a toilet? No. Does anybody know what they used to do when they didn't have inside toilets? Is it Adomares?
They would dig holes outside?
Yeah, so they would have what we would call outhouses, right? So there would be like a building outside, and they would have like a seat with a hole in it and things to go down there. It was kind of gross. Now, in the 1800s, now we're used to like there being a city and there are lights on all the time. There are people all around. In the 1800s, it was not like that. Their nearest neighbors were miles away. But you know who still lived in the area? Wildlife, right? There were coyotes, there were mountain lions, there were all sorts of things outside that could get you if you wandered outside. And you don't want to be anybody's snack, right? So if you needed to go to the bathroom when you couldn't go outside, you used a chamber pot, and that's what this is. No chamber pots for me. Thank you. What do you all think? Yay or nay, chamber pots? Big thumbs down. Big thumbs down for me. And the worst part, of course, is that you have to take them outside in the morning. And it was always the kids' job to do that. And generally, it was like the youngest kid's job, as long as they could carry it, right? Because nobody wants to do it. And so your older brothers and sisters would always be like, no, you have to do it. So if you're like the youngest in your family, it might have been your job to take out the chamber pot. Just saying, we're pretty lucky to have toilets. All right, now we're going to go outside. There's actually even more to this house.